YJ is joining us today for our latest Relevance live session. So, YJ is a senior solution engineer here at Relevance. So, if you work with our enterprise team, so you are an enterprise customer, you'll have one of our solution engineers who will help you build and learn how to build agents. So, YJ is an expert agent builder as a result. He's built agents for a variety of different enterprises and also for the team here at Relevance. So today he's going to be talking about how he builds agents that help him for meetings. So YJ is across many different customers, and as a result of that, he has to prepare for many different meetings across many different customers, understand their issues, context switch very, very easily, and he's got a very agentic process for doing this. So really excited to have him here today. And so YJ, I'm going to open the floor to you. And just for those who haven't joined these sessions before, if you've got any questions, please leave them in the chat and I will answer them as we go through, and then also flag any that YJ and I will discuss at the end. But YJ, I'll hand that over to you.
All right, cool. Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to share my screen and get started. I have very few slides and a lot of more on the relevant side, which I think is probably a better balance of things. But I'm going to share my screen now, and you should be able to see it again. Very simple slide design, but I just really want to kind of just set the scene. This is a use case that I actually presented at a event that I think is a really good one and pretty easy example to kind of understand, and one that's very useful. It's one of those use cases where you just save time and it increments day by day, week by week, and it all adds up. And it's something that I just want to share really as an introduction, and also to talk about, how to get started building AI agents. We have quite a bit of time. So one of the things that I want to do with this session that's kind of a bit different from the previous time I presented this or others is that I also want to get more in depth with tool building as well, because that's something that's very important to building agents. It's something that when you start can be quite technical. Like all technical things, things are getting easier day by day with AI, but I also want to talk about exactly also how you build tools, because that makes your agents cheaper, it makes your agents more efficient, it means they have more superpowers and they can actually do things. And it also means that from this, if you're really interested in building, you will have a general approach for any type of agent or any type of use case that you want to do as well. So I'm going to talk about meeting prep, and I'll kind of highlight as well when we talk about maybe some of the more not necessarily advanced, but quite technical concepts within AI agent building. But I also want to keep it at a level where don't feel like it's too much. I really want to show you that a lot of agent building today is very accessible. And one more thing I want to highlight is, because I've got a few screens, I'm going to look here as well if there's questions. So it's not like I'm not paying attention or like too hyperactive or something like that. But that's just what's going to happen. So let's talk about meeting prep. And this is a use case that we have internally that we use across all of sales. As Alex has kind of said, I think in this day and age, you context swap a lot. And so having anything to help alleviate that and just make things easier is amazing, right? So this is something that lives in our Slack that we have for every type of meeting, particularly for sales. It's sort of like what the customer last talked about, what they care about, what are risks, what do they want to know? And these are things that are really, really important for us, and that help us kind of, set and then go to the next meeting. We have something similar for internal as well, but at least from an external standpoint, this is one that's really good. And this is going to be the use case that we're going to build out. And I also want to talk about Copilot and Autopilot. And when we build agents and we build these agents to fulfill these use cases, the way you use your agent is also very important. You either have your AI agent that's kind of, your teammate. I like to think of them sometimes as unpaid interns that are very enthusiastic because they just can work, for pretty much overnight and just keep going. But you generally work with your AI agent either as a co-pilot, where, you're working together to tackle problems, or as an autopilot where the agent's kind of working independently from you as well. And I just want to showcase with kind of the framework and how we approach this, how we can set something up for both co-pilot and autopilot. And there are actually benefits for both of these approaches. So we kind of take the fundamental problem of prepping for meetings, and we kind of have two ways we can use this agent that actually have different benefits and unlock different things for us as well. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go into Relevance. I'm going to introduce what Relevance looks like for those who haven't seen it, and talk about, just the navigation, and just showcase what exactly we're building up towards, right? So on my tab now, you should have seen Relevance. It's, holiday season as well, so we've got a very nice festive banner. But really, this is your kind of, portal to where you can start building your own AI agents. And for those who maybe are really new to the idea of AI agents, what exactly do we mean when we say AI agent? Well, everyone here should be familiar with ChatGPT, and AI agents are kind of the next evolution, right? So AI agents can actually do things. Whereas with ChatGPT, I'm sure people have run into this scenario where you're like, oh, ChatGPT has said, I'm a text model, so I can't do this or I can't do that. Agents can actually do things, right? They use tools to allow them to integrate with different things to be able to solve problems, tackle other use cases that ChatGPT, for example, is limited to do. But agents still use the reasoning power of large language models. And on Relevance here within your workforce, you're able to build, whatever agent you wish, and you're also able to create tools to attach those agents to allow them to do things. There's a lot of other capability here, but want to highlight agents and tools as well. The other thing that I'm going to go into is the chat. So the chat is more like your the chat GPT style interface on Relevance, but the ability here is that you can add or talk to any agent that you've built. And this is where we kind of talk more about that Copilot kind of use case as well. But I'll also show the chat in kind of more practical scenarios, because we're going to be building this agent, and I want to talk as well around like some practicalities in terms of like tackling an agent for the first time. So this is the agent that we want to build. This is kind of an idea of what our version 1 looks like. So what do I mean when I say version 1? I'm going to say version 0 as well. Version 1 is the first version of the agent that you build that will solve the use case that you want. Because ultimately speaking, when you build an agent, you can always add to it. You can always do more, right? So I've got an agent that, if you can see here from this description, is going to prep my meetings. I could add something like, okay, now email me my prep, right? Or I want you to live in Slack. I don't have this configured in Slack at the moment. So there's so many things that you can do, but what's the core capability that you want the agent to have for what you're trying to solve? The core of it is it needs to prep me for meetings. So it needs to actually summarize previous meetings that I've had. So to get to this, we need to start tackling that problem in terms of making sure that this thing can actually summarize stuff for us. So how do we do that? So let's just take a look at what these meetings look like, right? So I have on my Google Drive an example of all these meeting transcripts as where they could be stored. And this is an example meeting that I've had with one of our customers. This is F-Shore, right? So, I've got a chat with Doron. We've had some meetings around them purchasing Relevance. So trying to understand in this next meeting what the next action items are. And of course, for those who aren't in sales, it really is this easy. You just say, hey, can you spend 1 million with us? And they say, yep, for sure, we'd love to do it. It is really that easy. I really wish everything was like that, but this is an example of like getting towards like I guess an outcome, right? But I think the important thing here is basically putting Doran's enthusiasm aside. The CEO is going to come into the next meeting, so I just need to really prep myself and just be ready to have that meeting with the CEO and any other meetings. So this is what this agent's going to do, right? So if I go back to the slides, what does my agent need to summarize, right? So now this seems like very basic what I'm outlining here, but there is I guess, method to this madness, right? Which is I just want to be very clear, like what I want this agent to do, like highlight facts, get key actions, what the customer likes, and any risks. That's what I need to be aware of because that's what's important to me, and I need the agent to do this. So how do we get started? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my version 0. So my version 0, if I go back into Relevance, go to new agent, and then go to default. So I'm just starting from scratch. Version 0 is just the base summarization, just the base unit of work for this use case that I want to be sure the agent can do, right? So this is YJV0 prep meeting agent. And so what I want this thing to do is I want this to be able to take those summaries that I've just shown you and be able to output it in the format that I want to give me the information that I want. And within Relevance, in this main screen, after you name your agent, you now have this kind of blank canvas to write your prompt, right? So everyone who's maybe used ChatGPT, you'd be familiar with like prompt engineering. So you'd say something ChatGPT like, write me a birthday wish, okay, and then ChatGPT gives you something, and now you say, okay, now make it a bit more casual, right? That's the essence of prompt engineering. You're kind of writing stuff and giving instructions to the AI so that it gives you something. So in this case, what I want is something like this. And just for convenience sake, I'm just going to copy and paste um, what it is that I have. So you are an assistant who works to prepare materials for scheduled calendar meetings. You get the details of a meeting transcript, and your job is to summarize it following these rules. Once I've done that, I'm just going to save it on the right, and then I'm going to go into run. So I went from build to run, and then all I'm going to do is just copy and paste this meeting transcript into here, and this is my test. And I want to make sure that it can summarize it the way that I want. If it can't, this is where like the most important kind of building, I would say, of the agent comes in, because if it can't do that, then it's about understanding, was the prompt correct? Or is this actually a use case that doesn't really make sense for an agent to pursue, right? Because fundamentally, if the agent cannot perform the core unit of work, then that's when you have to think about these things. And in this case here, I can see that it's summarizing it pretty well, and it's getting at like what I want. But I can see here, if I compare back to my slides, I don't have any risks that are highlighted, right? I just have the positives here. So what do I need to do? Well, I go back into build, I go back into the prompt, and it's really easy to change it. I can just go enter, and now I want to say any risks from the customer. Save it. We're just going to run this again. And then this time it should be able to highlight any key risks that I need to be aware of, right? So what I'm doing here is just making sure that this agent can actually do what it is that I want. And the really good thing about this is that at this point, you don't even need to connect any application, right? Like, yes, at some point I need to get all the stuff from Google Drive, but I want to prove the use case out first before I even spend time doing that. It's, something similar like, let's say I wanted to, this is one use case I worked on, which is like writing marketing emails, and all the information about the prospect is in Marketo. But before I even do anything in Marketo, I just need to get the prospect information, get it to write a basic email, and see what happens. And you can see here that the risk is here, right? Even though Dorian agreed to buy, we still need approval from his manager and the CEO involvement, right? So this becomes very, very important. And whether it's any use case, I also want to talk about as a practical thing, like how you can also test things on my point around like you don't need to connect things yet. Just as easily, if you want to, you can go into chat. So I've got if I click on, I've got a chat tab here as well, but click on chat. This will bring up the relevance chat. So I can do something like generate me an example sales transcript between myself, YJ, and the customer, Doran, where the customer agrees to buy, but we have to meet with the CEO. So you can just use AI to kind of generate your data, and then this is the basis for then testing your agents. This is honestly like one of these really good hacks where it's like, if I don't have access to data, if it's not easy for me to export, obviously the real data that you want to use your use case on, the better. But if you just want to simulate something, just do something like this, copy it in, put it back into your agent, and then see if it can actually do it. So what I've done here is just basically start with a V0. And what I want to do now is build up to the actual version of the agent, right? Because I'm now convinced that this can actually do what I want. This is a really good use case. It can obviously save me time. Let's now start to build that agent up towards that version 1. So just showing as a start, what I like to do is just to get to, the output very quickly, what that version 0 can look like so that you can know that this is a good use case to do. Okay, cool. So now what I want to do is I want to do a version 1. And I'm going to get more into like how you build the prompt, how you add tools, and we can look at the output as well. So this is going to be YJ version 1, prep meeting agent for Relevance Live. Okay. Again, I'm going to copy and paste the prompt over, and then I'm going to walk through the specifics of how I generally design a prompt. Now, this is going to be a cop-out answer to a question I can foresee, which is like, how do you build a good prompt? That's what everyone wants to know. Honestly, whatever you do works. But there are some general rules that kind of help frame a good prompt. What we like to do is we generally have three main sections for building an agent, because building an agent and prompting for an agent is a lot different from just doing ChatGPT, right? Even though you're still, prompting and getting towards a better answer. You have three parts. You have your task that you want to achieve. You have the tools, which are, the things the agent's going to use to achieve this goal, and then instructions, which highlight, how you want to use the tools to achieve the task. So let's look at the task first, which is what I have up here. So the task, you always want the agent to assume a role. So the agent's role is they're my assistant to help me prepare materials before scheduled calendar meetings and prep. And again, we've got confidence that we know that it can do summarization, can do kind of the base work here. So then we're going to specify the details of what it is that this agent is going to do to prep for meetings. Then we're going to specify the tools. So the means for how this agent is actually going to perform this task. And then we have instructions here. So how it's going to use the tools. So when you receive an email, start by retrieving previous customer meetings, summarize key actions, then research the contact on LinkedIn, perform public outreach, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect some tools. I'm going to show you the output so you can kind of see, like, when you get tools, like what this looks like. Then we're going to do a deeper dive into how to build tools. But I really want, with this phase of this presentation, to talk about like how we put the tools in, how the instructions line up, and how everything is, consistent from the agent point of view. So when I get rid of this text, this placeholder, and I press / on my keyboard, this brings up the tool menu. And what I want to do is I want to just type the name of the tool that I want. So this is summarize meeting transcripts from Google Docs. This is what's going to allow me to actually grab and summarize all of the meeting transcripts here, because before I was doing it one by one, and obviously that's just not going to fly. And then I want it now as well, because I want to prep for the CEO meeting. I also want to include capabilities around research, right? So I want this agent to read up and find out more about the CEO, find out more about other people that are going to be in this meeting, and then it's going to be able to use these tools to give me an enhanced meeting prep. So I'm going to say here, perform Google search as well. Cool. I think the one I had for here was YJ. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to save this. And generally what I find with this one is that when the agent reads this prompt, it's going to say tool selection, use this to retrieve previous customer meetings and summarize key actions. And then in the instructions, when you use these, like the same phrasing, that's how it knows to associate this step with this step as well. Again, you can also just like say when you receive an email, use this and do it like that as well. But this is just one way that personally I like to organize. That one you don't necessarily have to follow, but I really highly recommend this framework of task, tools, and instructions. To be very honest, everything else is optional based on your use case. So like you can see I have additional rules like ignore all participants. One example of a additional rule that people like is they like to have an example output. So for it's like generating email, marketing email, here's what the marketing email should look like. And that's actually really good, except that now from what we know from building agents and just what everyone else kind of in the market is talking about, agents actually transfix on examples really well. So you might find that when you provide a static example, it will really hone in and just try and generate everything following that example. And now if you want to do marketing outreach or any type of outreach where you want the agent to be creative, that might not be something you might want to do. So these are kind of the trade-offs with your prompting. So with that, I've saved. So now let me just test it. So I'm going to say I have a meeting with Doran and John Solden from F-Shore. So let's just see what meeting prep that I'm going to get out. I just saw one question. Why do you use Google search YJ? That's because I just put the YJ is just my name, so it's easy to find, and because I want to also specifically talk about how I built that particular tool. That's just why. Um, or maybe I'm a narcissist. I don't know. So you can interpret how that however you wish. So again, I'm I'm going to use this opportunity to talk more about tools, to talk about like how this agent is, what this agent is doing, because we've kind of gone from the version 0 where it's like kind of more like ChatGPT to now a proper agent because it can actually do things. So this tool here, which I haven't really gone into like how it works yet, but this is presumably getting all of these transcripts from Google Meets. Sorry, Google Docs. So if I click on this, you can see an input, and then you're going to see an output that's going to come out from the tool. So this is going to be, first of all, it's going to take the name of the customer. So the agent gets this from the prompt, and it's what we now called not we also use the word context, which I'll explain more about. I guess context in terms of like the input that it gets, but it's gonna then use that and be like, oh, I'm looking for meetings from F-Shore, and then I'm gonna use this to then get output, and this is gonna give me the summarized meetings, and then we're then going to then look at the LinkedIn contacts, so research on LinkedIn, more information about this particular prospect for the meeting, and then prep that content as well. So it's just gonna do that. Uh, in the background. And then it's going to also research on LinkedIn and Google search. And hopefully it's going to do these for both of these contacts and whoever's in the meeting as well, right? So if I go to this finish tool now, we can see the answer, which is, here is the summary of your meetings with Escher prepared for your next customer call. And so this is what was discussed across 3 meetings. And we'll get into how we got these 3 meetings. But now this then gets added as additional information into the agent that it's going to use to generate the prep meeting. So this is what I highlighted before around, we think about prompts and like building these kind of instructions, and then this input is also a prompt. When we build agents, we now want to think about context, because context refers to not only this bit here, but also what we get out. And this becomes very important because when you think about context, this is kind of the base principle for building agents. Again, if we go back to the metaphor around like, this is our like very eager intern. If you're telling this intern, you need to help me prep meetings, like how do you actually give it instructions and how do you give it information? So that information is known as context for agents, and how you give context to agents determines how effective they really are. And so now we can see an update here of our pre-meeting brief, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so obviously this is just going to keep going and going in terms of just streaming this output, but we can kind of see this gives us exactly what we want, the key actions and context from previous meetings. It gives me the next step. So this is the core of what I want it to do. And it's given additional information, so I know like maybe I've never met John before, but it will tell me like his own familiarity with like AI and automation, for example, right? And that helps me prep and helps me do things with this particular meeting. And it's got all of that because the agent's been able to not only enhance the information from Google Drive, but with LinkedIn and Google as well, Google Search. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to now go into those tools to showcase exactly how we build it and bring information across. Because at the moment, everything I've just kind of typed out. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to take a step back from home, and we're now going to go into tools. Okay, so tools, I have a long list of tools here as well for all the different agents. So let's go into first the Google search, which is kind of the simplest way to start. So with the Google search, actually for this one, let me build this from scratch so you can kind of see it. For the other ones, there's a few more steps, so I'll just look at the existing examples, but I'm going to build the Google search from scratch and show you. So when we build a tool, we brought into this menu. And again, this is a way for our agent to actually have kind of superpowers to be able to interface, use other apps, and bring in other information. So the way we do this is I can go to add step, and Google search is a very popular tool step. So we can search for things as well. So for example, I want to do like, I don't know, Microsoft integration, like I can search for Microsoft as well and look at all of this. But I'm just going to go into Google search. And then this brings up this tool step into here. Every tool is different, but fundamentally they expect an input and they're going to generate an output. So let's just say I wanted to find more about John, right? So if I type John in, run this, we're going to find information about him. And the idea is I want to be able to use this for my agent. So how do I do that? Well, the first thing is I need to define an input, right? So the input is what the agent is going to fill out, because again, I'm doing everything by hand. So an easy way to do this is I'm going to go to this button here and click, and that's going to create a search query input. If I wanted to, I could do this by hand. So I could just say, I want a text, because this is going to be the search topic. And then this is going to be the topic you are searching for. So on Relevance, there's a lot of inbuilt tool steps for a variety of different apps. So from Google Search to Microsoft, everything in between. We can make API calls or do custom code as well, which is a bit more technical, but it means two things. One, we can integrate with a lot of different apps. And two, now because with AI, it's really easy to get the AI to generate a lot of code and things for you. It's actually quite easy for you to actually use these tools, even if you've never had these skill sets before in the past. And I'll show you that as well. But what we're doing here is, searching for a topic. So this is John, and then I'm going to connect this topic variable to the search query, like so. Um, this menu will show up and ask me what it is. I can type it with the curly braces. I can just click. And so if I run this tool, this is now going to enter a topic, John Solden, and then get this output here. And by doing this, now if I run this tool in an agent, right? Example, Google search. Then the agent is going to read this input. It's going to say, okay, what do I put for this thing called topic? Oh, the topic you are searching for. Okay, so I know what to put in here. So I'm just going to put in John, and it's going to get an output, which now we're going to get our agent to use, which is great. Now, the thing is, and this is now where I want to get and talk about maybe a more technical / advanced concept, but it's really not that advanced. It's just new, which is this idea of context engineering. So before we talked about context, and I talked about, imagine that you are training someone to do this task. And if you said to them, you can look at Google to find this information. And in the prompt of the agent, we told it how to use that information. But if we were to be if I were to be very blunt with this, and imagine now like this agent is this intern, would I actually really do this? Like if I tell this intern like, hey, you're going to use Google search, you're going to get back John Solden CEO at F-Short, link https www.linkedin.com / like I'm being a bit facetious here, but the wider question is, does the agent actually need access to all this information? Like what does it actually want to do? Well, what I want is the most important stuff that John did. Like I want these snippets and I want maybe the links. So what I'm going to do as a next step is I'm going to summarize with a LLM. For doing this, I like to pick Google Gemini Flash. Where is it? Here. Because it's a really cheap model and it's really good at summarizing. But I want to say summarize the output, type double curly braces, and then go to Google Organic. And then I'm going to run this. And then what it's going to do is actually going to take all of that and then summarize it into a much more efficient output. And this is what's going to be used by the agent. And what I'm saying here is I'm distilling the essence of what I want, which is I want the snippets, I want the key information, what John's done, but I don't care about like the order of these things. For now, I don't care about links. I don't care about like position. Like, why do I need this? And when you imagine running it across many different people, many different meetings, the cost of this adds up. And what I want is I want the most efficient information possible, because this reduces the cost of running this agent, because agents, the more text they use, like the more expensive they are. And also makes it more efficient because I'm giving it the core information. So this is exactly how it is that I want the agent to use this, right? So if I go back, for example, like into the agent that I ran previously, right? And I look at like how it used the Google search. So you can see here that, so it's filled out the topic of what it is to be researched. And then it's given that answer of, contact information, Dora Bahar can be reached here. Here are recent achievements. So like, this is what's important rather than all this other extra information about, links and that sort of stuff, even though like it's been able to find it as well, right? So that's how this tool has been integrated within this agent. And I've just walked through exactly how to build a sample tool and how the agent is using it and filling it out. What I want to do now is I want to talk about this LinkedIn tool and the Google Docs as well. And so for LinkedIn, you can actually do something similar, right? So let me look at this LinkedIn tool. So if I go to this one here, research content on LinkedIn and summarize, what I've done is, just to explain, when I added steps, we have a lot of inbuilt steps to integrate and take information from LinkedIn. So what I'm doing first is I'm getting profiles, then I'm getting posts and like the profile URL, then I'm getting the user post and then their profile like information as well. If I go into logs, I can go to test input, and that's going to show you an example of like what an agent did. So I can run this for you now just so you can see what comes out, right? So we have Doran, last name Bahar, and the current company he's in. It's going to look for basic information. I want this URL because this URL is then going to get me posts. And then from the post, I'm then going to get profile information as well. And I also do the summary here. So given information about prospect, and you need to summarize them, their profile and their posts. Let me show you the difference with having this step versus not having this step. Because when you summarize, like I said, the idea is that you're getting the core information, but you can also see now with much more data, I might also, if I'm not being careful, maybe losing out on important information that I need, right? So there's a benefit of cost, but then there's also like, how do I actually, get specific information? Let me show you the impact of cost. If I go back here, this is an agent that I previously ran, and you can see here that I'm running it on a previous example, which is the one which is without the summary. So if I click on this, I get back all this information here. This agent costs me about 600 credits to run. So for credits on the platform, like this is LLM cost, we don't charge anything on top of what OpenAI or Gemini, whatever is spending. So like this is like the same cost. If you look up like OpenAI cost or Gemini cost or whatever, like it'll be the same here. But you can see that I'm spending like this amount. And you can see that with each tool call, because the context is quite large, that the agent LLM step as well increases from like 1 to like 97 to now like 196, and that adds up. And then when I summarize, I now reduce it to like 135 because I'm only using the absolute information that I need, right? So this is going from, 1 to 2 to now it's pretty like 3, 7, 10. So it's pretty stable. But if we look at the output as a whole, like this is still really good. Like this is summarizes exactly what I need, gives me the core research information, key risks, recommendations, all of that sort of stuff as well. So you could argue like I've gotten to the place that I wanted to, like much more cheaply, and essentially also a bit faster as well because there's less information. So like this summarization, which forms the basis of like this process we call context engineering. So understanding what input and output you're actually giving the agent, and do you actually really need it, is the core basis of building agents. Okay. So now let's look at the Google Docs integration. And the Google Docs integration also kind of covers what I want to talk about with that final point around like, okay, but what if like I summarize, but I may be missing out on specific information, right? So like what I might need to do is I need to say into the LLM, make sure, you include how many likes they got on their post or something, right? But, you're kind of telling an LLM to do this. And, again, like the LLM, for example, like, it can do this pretty well, but sometimes like for information that you want like 100% of the time, you want now more deterministically rather than non-deterministically through this LLM, you might want to be able to do something through code or through an API. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. And I also want to show you that it's actually much easier than you realize. Okay. So now let's look at this summarize meeting transcripts from Google Docs. I'm going to go to a log and test an input as well so you can see what this tool gets you. So what's going to happen is I want to look in my Google Drive for all the meeting transcripts from F-Shore. I've got another one here from another customer that it's irrelevant because I only care about F-Shore. So I want to look only for, where the documents say F-Shore. So I get all of that. And then I want to get that content. And when I want to get this content, because in this array, so in this shape of like everything's packed together, I need to loop through this array, as in for each line of this object, I now need to get the document. So the tool step I use is get document. So again, all I did was in here, Google Doc, look for the step. But because I need to loop through it, the first thing I need to build first is a loop. So then I added the loop in. You specify what it is you want to loop through, which is this, and then the ID. And then for each ID, I'm going to get the document content, and it's going to look like this. And then ultimately, all I care about is all of this. Okay? Now, then I did some thing here in the code I'm about to explain, and then we summarize. Okay, so that's very similar to what we do, because we just want to get the output out. We don't care about the raw text. We just want key outcomes. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that each meeting transcript represents like each of the 3 meetings from the 1st of October to now the 10th. And if I didn't have this step, and all the step is doing is like preparing this data, I would have like a giant blob of information, and this summary might not be able to understand like the time context, right? Of like each of these meetings step by step. But I also don't know how to code. So how would I do this? Well, I can go back into the chat, and it's really easy. I can just ask like a chat to like, can you write me Python code that does this? Like, I still need to understand how Relevance does tool inputs and outputs, and we've gone through that because I've shown you, the curly braces in Python code on our documentation that Alex and the team have built together. If we want to reference previous inputs and outputs, we use this notation. But if you know this notation is like, okay, I know how this works, but I need Python code, you can just type something and write it, and then you just say, I need you to just make sure that the meeting title and transcript use this information because this comes from Google Docs, and then combines them together. Make sure there's new lines. Make sure that it separates the title from the transcript. Make sure you indicate the end of the transcript, maybe with end or whatever word you want, and then you want to output it back. You get something like this, right? Again, when you're actually doing this with your agent, you probably might spend more iterations building out this Python code because, and this happens to me as well, you probably get a Python code, you'll run it, it might not work, and then you might want to, try it out again. But like what I'm trying to get with this is that it's really easy to just get started, right? So I'm going to take this in Relevance. I need to return a response. So I'm just going to run this like from the chat, and like this is going to give me what I want to summarize. So what I want to show is kind of this journey around like when you build tools, there's a lot out of the box that we have. The basis of building tool in terms of putting in the input and output, but the core of building an effective agent is you want to engineer your context, and you can do that through the LLM summarization. When you now deal with more data, such as with LinkedIn, you should still do that. But you might find that maybe there's key information here or there that you might want to make sure that you're always keeping track of. And in that use case, that's the case here with the Google Docs, because I want to make sure that I'm splitting it out. So I'm creating my own, engineering my own context specific for this example. And I can use code or APIs. If I don't know how to code, just use an LLM and just get started. I think like the best customers that I've worked with are ops people, sales people, marketing people that don't know how to code or don't know how to do all this sort of stuff. But there are people from organizations that have, from different customers that I worked with the same tenure, but they have a completely different mindset of just now with LLMs and AI, it's so easy. Just put it into here to get it to do what I want, and then I can start building agents really effectively. So for me, like I think that's kind of the biggest differentiator. Okay. So now what I've done is I've just gone through tools. We've gone through like a version 1 of this agent as well. What I want to do is now briefly talk about how we set up for an autopilot, set up for a copilot, the benefits of both, and then maybe leave some time for questions because I've seen some questions in the chat as well, and I can give my thoughts as well. I've seen Alex, you've done a great job answering, so thank you for that. Now let's talk about our use case. So we want our use case can be used in 2 ways: an autopilot or a copilot. So let's talk about the autopilot first. And just in the just for time's sake, like I've set this up before, but I'll show you how I set it up. So what does autopilot mean? Autopilot means it lives in my calendar, right? So if I have my calendar of all my particular events and meetings and stuff that come up. So I just want to show you the calendar that I've got. Let's see here. Right. So I'm not very popular. I only have the one meeting that I did beforehand, but like I've got this. The agent should be able to see this and then perform the meeting prep and give it to me. That's an autopilot. So to do that, I've taken this the existing prompt. I've gone to triggers, and then I gone add trigger. We have a lot of triggers out of the box. These are just our most popular ones, but you can find out a lot more. My favorite trigger that I never use is like I don't know if it's still here or not. Oh, they used to have like this one called 42 Elks, which I have no idea what that does. But anyway, so like, you have your WhatsApp, you have all sorts of other stuff as well. But, you know, we can add in Google Calendar. The settings for each of these triggers is going to be different for like what app you want to use. So I've got one set up for 10 minutes before. We can have 1 hour before, whatever. But now once I set this up, this lives in basically my inbox. So you can see my queue of like all the different meetings that I've processed as I've basically done this demo. And so we can see here now, like when I get in my trigger from Google Calendar, the actual information I get from Google Calendar, but it still has the core information of like, it's with F-Shore, who it is, John Solden and Doran. I've used fake emails because I really don't want to spam my own customer doing this. But it's run that same process and giving me my pre-meeting brief. So now it's going to run automatically across all my meetings coming in, which is awesome, right? The other thing that I can do is I could use this in a Copilot. So now imagine like I have to prepare for like, let's say an internal meeting, and I need to prep like for my managers, like, okay, what's the current status of this deal with F-Shore? So in the chat, what I can do is I can go into here and I can ping the meeting agent and say, oh, I have a meeting with Doran and John Solden. I'm just showing you what I've previously done because this takes like a couple minutes to run. Just want to, just get to questions at the end. But then I can even tag other agents. I can say, hey, slide builder, can you build me a slide deck that's one page or discuss with actions as an agenda? And it's going to do that. And so the benefit of this Copilot flow is that work today and what you want to do, like, is very ad hoc. Like anything can happen, right? Like the nature of the world is like you need flexibility. So with Copilot here, like the agents that you've built that give you that value, like you can just tag and add them in however you want to reflect like the nature of like what you're doing day to day, right? Because I very quickly, like, no one, honestly, like people have less and less time to build PowerPoints, right? Like I need to prep for this internal meeting now, build me this, and now I get something that I can use. Like, here is what we discussed, here are the next milestones, here's the next steps as well, right? Like we didn't have owners, but I can edit this. I can say like, this is on YJ to do, this is on Doran to do, that sort of stuff. This is just kind of like the one shot that came out. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll do that as well. So can you assign YJ as the owners for all of the actions because it's on him, right? So, these are things that like, it's a very kind of like a dynamic, iterative tool. I cannot lie. Like while I was prepping for this, it's like while I'm building the agents, I have like my slide building on the other screen as well, right? So like this is just something that we built to try and reflect like how people want to work, for example. And that's really what these copilots are really good for. So what I want to do is now kind of like while this is running, just kind of summarize like what I've gone through and maybe talk about some questions as well, right? So we built like a very sample prep meeting agent here. And what I really want to do first is talk about when you build an agent, like what's your core agentic unit of work? What do you want the agent to do? And you need to be able in a situation where you can iterate and build very quickly and prove out that it can do that, right? Because if it can't, then there's something wrong with your prompt, something wrong with your instructions, or your use case is not a good agentic use case. And even if your data, like let's say I want to work with HubSpot or Salesforce, right? I haven't connected to Salesforce or HubSpot yet. Don't worry about it. Just like copy and paste the stuff from Salesforce or HubSpot. If you can't because there's like some data restrictions or whatever around it, use chat, simulate something. Like those applications are very well used. So like AI is going to be very good at like simulating very good synthetic data that you can use to prove out this pillar here. Once you're done with that and you're ready to build your version 1, build your prompt out and think around task, your tools, and your instructions as a structure. At that point, once you have that as a base, you have a really good base for building out your version 1 agent. And then when you want to make it really effective, think about prompt from evolving from prompt engineering, which is what we know now day to day as we're interacting with GPT, ChatGPT, to now context engineering. So that's like, what input are you giving to the agent? What's the agent getting from the tool? How is it using it? Again, if I were to train an intern to do this task, what am I telling the intern? Because information overload is a very real thing, right? Like, I can't expect just to onboard this intern, tell them absolutely everything. You can't expect the same thing like from this agent as well, right? To make it do the best it can, you give it the core information it needs to be able to perform the work that it needs to do. And so that's kind of the core basis of what that was. And then I've showcased as well how to kind of set up like an autopilot and a copilot from your use case as well. No doubt when you build your use case, you have probably one in mind, but I also want to kind of just showcase like on relevance, especially like what you can do and how useful like what you've built out can be. So with that, um, hopefully uh, that wasn't like maybe like a too maybe I kind of did the wrong thing, right? Just a deluge of information. But again, this is recorded. Probably we'll do 10 minutes of questions now as well. But feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, all that sort of other stuff, and ask me questions. Happy to chat as well. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, YJ. I'll find your LinkedIn quickly while we're chatting so people
yeah,
can connect with you and chat further about this. We've gotten a lot of questions, and as you said, I've been answering quite a few, but I've kind of filtered them down. And I think we're going to start with Anessa's question because it was around
sure.
the tool that you shared. It was, is summarize meeting transcripts from Google Docs native functionality of relevance, or is some automation that she needs to build? That tool, your agent templates, is this something that you can upload to Marketplace so people like
Oh yeah.
Aneta can take value from it?
Oh for sure. Yeah, I'll definitely upload this. And then I don't know.
Amazing.
Uh, yeah, and I'll probably answer some other parts as well as that. It's like, so everything here, like this is obviously, like, as is, like default from relevance, right? Like I've shown. I guess the arrangement of it in terms of like what you want this thing to do. This is definitely like something, yeah, I've just walked through how to create. I can definitely submit on Marketplace. Um, Probably just do after this call, like as soon as I can. But yeah, that's kind of just like bringing all of like these kind of like pieces together. I look at it as like Lego, like like those Lego sets, like the 3-in ones where it's like you get the base blocks, but you could do anything. Like that's pretty much like
Mm.
what we've done here, right?
It's like the flowers ones, which reminds me, I actually kind of want to buy one of the flowers ones in the Black Friday sale. But anyway,
Yeah,
that's an aside for me. But that's perfect, and then hopefully that answers your question. I am a marketplace reviewer, so YJ, whenever you upload that, I will get onto it and review it, and hopefully get into the marketplace soon. Great. I'll move on to Raphael's question. So he's built his own meeting prep agent. And so what he's really interested in is being able to automate it from other people's calendars and then send the output of what the meeting agent gets for preparation to them on Slack. How would you do this if do you need to get them? He's using Google Calendar, by the way. Do you
yep.
need to get them all to log into Relevance and add their credentials, or what would you do here?
Yeah, great question because obviously this is something we use for us, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
we didn't ask for myself, like Alex, like your credentials, all that sort of stuff, like authenticated. So there's two main ways to go about it, right? The first one is you can have a standard kind of like account that everyone kind of shares their calendars with. So for example, with our meeting agent that operates off people's calendars, like the first version, that's what we had. So we had like Morris, the meeting agent, has his own calendar. You're sharing yours with Morris. So then if you look at Morris's calendar, it's like packed with like all these meetings, and then Morris knows what to do. So that's one, is like you have like a kind of like a shared like account. The second thing you could do, and this is an approach that we have for other agents that operate off people's calendar, and the sales one, because the sales one is opt-in, the sales upcoming meetings, is that we have a tool that we use as a trigger. So what I mean by that is, if I look at an example agent, we have like tool as a trigger. So what this is going to do is it's going to run a tool to start with, before it then does the rest of the prompt. And you can have this on the cadence, for example. And then what we've done is that we built a tool that will integrate with like um, Google Calendar API, and then it will basically like look for like a list of like all these people and their calendars, and then that's how events get added in, right? Because for that particular agent, not everyone in the company needs it. It's like opt-in. So we basically worked with like our sales ops person who built it, and we're like, yep, raise my hand, put me in. He like basically has like a table of like our names. It then operates off that table to then get all our calendar events and then send out that meeting as well. So that's the second way that you could do it.
So it doesn't require them to authenticate into
Correct.
Relevance and add there.
Correct.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. Well, that's really, really sick. And so he can message you on LinkedIn if he needs to get some more info on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Love that. Hopefully that answers your question, Raphael. Um, let's go on to another one. Danielle, I answered your question around is the chat using credits? Yes, it is. So if you use Relevance Chat, you are going to be charged credits for everyone who also was on the call, unless you've brought your own LLM API key. So for example, if you're using Relevance Chat, you've got an OpenAI API key and you select one of the GPT models, we're not going to charge you for just using the LLM in Relevance Chat. But you will get charged on things like the pre-built models. If you are running into issues hitting credits with Slide Builder, you're welcome to DM me. I can only DM people in the community if we've already DM'd before, so I can just let me know if you want me to DM you in the chat, and I will. We can chat about your Slide Builder credit usage. We're really excited to get more people using Slide Builder.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I just add one more thing to that, Alex? Just as a like
yeah,
more like, especially for people um who are like in enterprises, and maybe you probably have like enterprise LM keys as well, right? So again, like as we've said, like we don't charge any margin on top of like what you get from OpenAI or Claude or whatever. So like, we want you to like use your own keys, optimize credits, all that sort of stuff. And more often than not as well, like in your enterprise, like you might have an existing agreement like with a cloud provider, and when you have like an enterprise agreement, you probably have a cheaper rate as well that you might not be aware of. So like definitely find out like if those things exist, because then for sure like you could use that. You're more incentivized to use it because you probably get a cheaper rate and you can do way more. I have like one customer, for example, like they have OpenAI keys in Gemini. So what that means is because they use those because it's cheaper, all of the rest of their credits they could use on Claude or anything else, especially because one of the builders at this company like really likes Claude Opus for like one of his use cases for like sales outreach, and it's like it's a very expensive model, but now all the credits can go towards like Claude, right? So you know that's one thing
yeah.
you can ask.
I am a Sonnet 4.5 fangirl.
Yeah.
And our director of engineering got a little bit angry at me last week when I went through all my cursor credits. He was like, what model have I been using? And I'm like, Sonnet 4.5. Sorry, King. That's what I was up to.
It's too good
And
though.
so
That's why it's
too
too good.
good. It's too good.
Yeah.
Our support team, I think, is the most expensive team in the company right now because we're all using 4.5, but it works. It's amazing. It's the agents it's creating is incredible. Cool. Let's move on to Luke has a question, but I also want to quickly touch on the previous question, which was why did you use Google search?
Oh, I think he meant more like why did I put
You're like,
YJ in it? I think it was
taking it.
just again, it's just not. Let's just say narcissism. Let's go with that. Yeah.
But in like just as an FYI to people, our models when we bring them in, they can't actually like search the web just integrated. And so you do have to add for now, this may change in the future, a perform Google search step to your agents. For example, when I'm building support agents, because we have 2,000 integrations, right? As you guys probably already know, we don't have documentation on all 2000 integrations. We don't understand the dynamics of all these different APIs and how to use them and what even these products are. So one of my support agents that's really agentic is if it needs to learn about a certain thing, it'll go and perform a Google search. And then it also has tools for extracting website content. So it gets the Google search and then it extracts the website content so it understands the web pages that it finds on the Google search and then takes that information and uses it to inform its responses. So I am the kind of person that I just add those tools to almost all of my agents. I think it's just a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Luke, you and I, sorry, do you want to touch on that, YJ?
Oh no, I think just one thing to add is also like I think the lines between LLM and agents are also blurring a lot because now like
Mm,
ChatGPT, Claude, they also have searches built in, right? So like search
yeah,
is like very, it's a very easy thing to do, and they also have it built in. So technically, like they're becoming more as agents rather than just pure LLMs. But of course, like on relevance is like you build and customize like what you want to solve like your own use case. Like that's the
Yeah,
other
exactly.
side to it. Yeah.
And there's going to be some use cases that you just do not need to search the web. You do not need up to date information. It's just using an LLM, but then there's some that you do. So it's good to have that flexibility on our platform. Luke and I shared a bit of my prompting for support with Luke on this one, but this was an interesting question that we might just spend the last couple of minutes talking about is talking about how we prompt when we've got tools. So we put our tools in the instructions in the workflow section. Do we have a separate tools section? Are we repeating ourselves if we put them in both? Like, what is best practice? Are there even best practices? My answer to that is no, but what do you think, YJ?
Yeah, again, they're like the best practice is whatever works, right? Because it's very like when you look at like especially now at Relevance, you see all the like everyone building their own agents. Like it's very personalized, right? Honestly, agent building, but it's always a trade-off between performance and then um like cost, right? Because the more you have here, then the more the credit cost as well. So like if you're in a situation honestly where you are mentioning the tools and like embedding them like this multiple times, and this embed by the way is purely visual for us to see, right? The agent will see something else like basically like an ID to like match these tools and know to use it, but like effectively at the end of the day we're still prompting it, right? So if you're doing multiple embeds, that sort of stuff, like, and it works, great. But you also then think about like, okay, is this agent, am I the only one who needs to see this, or like other people are going to see this? Because if it's like a team-based thing, that's when organizing and that sort of stuff makes it better. For me personally, I like to organize it because it's like then very clear, like as I'm iterating, like I've kind of done these tools, like I just need to like edit like this part or the rules. Like often when I build an agent and I give it to someone who wasn't involved with the building, but like they are keen enough to like change the prompt, it then makes it very clear like, oh, all I need to do is change this bit. I don't have to do any of this other bit, right? Like it makes it a lot easier to hand off as well. So there's an element of who else is going to use it. There's then that element of like, what's practical. I would say the most important thing that I've learned is that whole thing about examples, which is like, again, in ChatGPT, write me a birthday message. Here's an example. For agents, that can work, but if you want the agent to be creative and follow rules but not follow them tightly, I would not necessarily do that type of examples or what they call like few shot prompting and that sort of stuff. Like that's something that we're actually learning very recently now, for example. So just
Yeah,
some
and I think the final point on that is if you are ever in doubt, I've got two principles that I use. First off, if someone who is not 100% technically literate can't read through your prompt and understand what's going on, it's probably a bit too technical. The AI isn't going to understand it. Keep it simple, stupid, I think is my motto in life.
yeah.
And secondly, there's a big refine with AI button right there on YJ's screen. And I'm pretty sure it's available to all of you. And so if you use that, you can talk to our inventor and say, hey, can you refine my prompt to make it clearer? I need it to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know if my instructions are super clear. Can you refine my prompts to make it cheaper? All these different things. And Inventor will go through and make some changes on your behalf. And so that also makes it pretty nifty. We had one final question from Raphael about Workday acquiring Pipe Dream. We hopefully will have more to come on that front. We were talking about it overnight. YJ,
This
any
meeting's
thoughts
being
on that?
recorded, right? So no comment.
Yes, no comment.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. I think it's a good final question to do. All right, team. Thank you so much for joining today. This is a great session, and thank you for all the questions. And YJ, you were wonderful. Thank you so much for this.
Oh, thanks for
And
having me,
so,
Alex.
oh, Anetta, you had one final question. Have you ever tried to overload one prompt, save yourself some work with using different tools? Not 100% sure what you mean by that. Have you tried to overload one prompt, save yourself? I'm not sure what you mean by
Mm,
overload.
I think I've definitely overloaded a prompt with too much information, but I've never
Yeah.
used a prompt to like in place of a tool because a tool does something way different because it like
Mm,
integrates with that information, right? Whereas the prompt is you're telling the agent like what to do, if that makes
mm.
sense, right? So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, cool. Amazing. All right, team. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the community. And this session will be recorded and put on YouTube. And we'll also try to get YJ's agent on Marketplace soon as possible. But thanks again. And we'll see you guys next week for the next Relevance live session.
thanks
Chat to you
everyone.
then. Bye.